Now we're going to take our batten braces, or our batten pieces that have the half-inch piece of tape on them. These are the pieces that we folded in half and sealed, and then put the extra half-inch piece of tape on. And what we're going to do is we're going to lay them down in the diagonal pattern you see there. The way it needs to be laid down is the tape needs to go towards the lead edge of the wing. And again, you can see through the pattern right now. You can see where we're laying it. It's the diagonal that goes from the very back of the center back of the wing up towards the outboard edge. Again, it's very important that you get the tape side towards the lead edge. You should have a 1/4 inch of material that should be that's untaped. That should be towards the trail edge. We're going to sight through our material, and we're just going to line it up to our diagonal cut there. Try and keep this end as close to the end of the material as possible without going over. It is more preferable if you're going to be off towards the inside where there's a little bit of extra ripstop there. Just lay the piece down, gently smooth it over, check and make sure everything's lined up. You'll notice that there is some material hanging past the lead edge. We will take care of that later. And we'll do the same to the other half. Once you're happy with both pieces, just use your burnishing tool to really push them into the material. Now we're going to take our longer half-inch piece of Dacron, the center brace. We're going to run it briskly through our fingers, putting a lot of pressure to make sure the tape adheres to the Dacron. And we're going to peel off the backing here. Now is a good time to check to see if you have any tape that's actually hanging over the edges. And as you can see here, we actually have some tape that is wider than our material. So we're just going to take it and we're going to kind of fold it in over on itself. This will help keep things clean as we go along. If you don't do this, you can clean the tape up later on by just rubbing your finger over it and kind of rolling it up into a ball. The tape will at this point act very similar to rubber cement. And you can see the two lines needed to align the center piece. We want to get the top here as close as we can. We're going to lay it down on only 1/2 first, trying to keep everything lined up. And you can see we're just going to fold it back and make sure everything stays flat, and then we're going to pull that over just a little bit so that it lines up perfectly with the other side and everything stays flat. Again, do not press hard so that you can take it off as shown here. If you make a mistake, you'll have a few attempts at doing this. Once you're happy, firmly press the piece in place. And now we're going to take our smaller 1/2-inch pieces of Dacron and we're going to lay them diagonally toward from the lead edge to the center. Again, checking for any tape that might be sticking over and just folding it under. Folding it back onto itself. You want to lay this down so you have about an 1/8 to 1/4 inch gap from the lead edge, right along the edge shown here, to the center piece. Once it's in place, use a burnishing tool and press it firmly into the material. Again, you'll do the same for the other side. Okay, in this one, instead of taking the tape off and then fold the material off, I've decided to actually take the excess tape off first. What I'm doing is I'm just grabbing it firmly between my fingers and pulling it off. And as you can see, now I have actually no excess left over. Either technique will work fine. Now we'll be taking our 1/2 inch tape, and as you can see through the pattern, there's 3 lines here. 2 lines are for the tape, the 2 outside lines here for the tape. Center line is for the center line will be for the carbon rod. Take the tape, press it firmly into place, and use your razor blade and cut it cleanly at the end of the material. You can do this, you can tape both pieces at the same time, both areas at the same time. Make sure you keep the tape aligned with the marks from the pattern. Once the tape is in place, press firmly down to ensure the tape is adhered to the material. We'll now pull out the carbon rods we need. We'll need one 4.5 inch piece of carbon rod, one 7.5 inch at this location, a 7.5 inch out towards the wingtip, and we'll also need a 9 inch piece out at the wingtip. Now we'll very carefully remove the tape backing here, watching as we go to make sure that the tape actually stays to the material. Now as you can see through the material, we have a center line now. We're going to start by taking the carbon rod and put it as close to the end of the material without going over as possible. We're going to drop it down right on top of that center line. And now we're going to take one of our 1/2 inch strips of ripstop nylon that we created before, and we're going to lay that right over the top of the carbon rod. Apply a little bit of pressure on both ends to make sure that it stays straight. You'll tack it down at both ends and then very gently rub your finger over it to adhere it down. Then you'll take your burnishing tool and press firmly down both sides, and then put the tip into the carbon rod to get a very good seal, very tight seal around the carbon rod. The excess material we're going to leave there for right now. Repeat this for the next piece shown here. Now we're going to take 1-inch tape and we're going to run it right down along the bottom tape line here. And we're going to run that all the way to the background shown here. We're actually going to cut this material off at an angle, staying just inside the batten brace, or the batten piece there. Now you want to take a piece of your tape and square it off again. We're going to press this firmly into place. You'll notice that there is still a little bit of material up above the piece of tape. We'll be getting to that in a second. You'll start by peeling off the backing. And now we're going to come through with a 1/2-inch tape and we're going to cover the piece of material that was missed. So we're going to follow the edge of the 1-inch piece of tape now, and once we get to the lead edge piece of Dacron, we're going to force the tape to kind of bend around the corner. You'll see a little bubble there. We're going to bring that right to the edge of the Dacron for the brace there. We're just going to run through and we're going to press it down on both sides. Again, there's that little bubble. We're just going to leave that there for a second. Once you get both sides taped down pretty well, then we're going to take our finger and we're going to run hard against that bubble to finish sealing down the tape. Okay, now we'll move this tape's backing. And we'll lay down the pieces of carbon rod to go in their appropriate places. This will be the 9-inch piece going here, and the 7.5-inch piece in this location. Next we'll be taking our wingtip covering material that we cut earlier, this piece shown here, and we're just going to lay that right over the top of it. And we're going to try and line up the trail edge with the tape line as closely as possible. Pulling slightly on the material. There should be some excess hanging over the edge. That'll be fine. We'll be cutting that off later. Don't worry if it doesn't completely cover the carbon rod. And we're just going to gently run over this with our fingers, trying to get everything sealed down nice and gently so that there's no bubbles, no wrinkles. And make sure you get it to go around both carbon rods. Once it's in place, then we'll take our burnishing tool and we'll really push it into the material. Again, same techniques as before. Push down the most of it and then go around and drive the edge into the carbon rods. This will help create a very good seal. Next we'll take a 2 to 3 inch piece of 1/2 inch tape and lay it right down around the brace area shown here. We're going to cut that off and just seal it in, press it in the material. And what we're going to do now is fold this excess over on itself. And you may have to cut a little bit of the edge material here just so you can get a nice clean fold. And you want to pull it back so that the bottom point here lines up with the end of the dacron for the lead edge. And you just lay it right on top of itself. It's shown here. Next we'll be taking our batten brace. Again, here I'm using the technique of pulling the excess tape off first. Okay, as you can see here, the tape started coming up, so I pushed the backing back down and I pushed the tape back into the material and finished taking the backing off. Now this particular piece there is a right and left to. You want the tape side down so when you look through the pattern they line up the same. Okay, if I went to the other side you could see it wouldn't line up with the pattern beneath. We're just going to lay this on top. This is going to give us a finished look and also help protect the ends of the carbon rod we've laid before. Now towards the lead edge we want to run right down the batten material. Keep that aligned as well as possible. Again, look through the pattern and keep that as aligned as possible. After it's been lightly tacked down, we're going to start at one edge and we're just going to start really pushing in with the burnishing tool. And we're going to start by going around the first piece of carbon rod and pulling back just as I've shown here. Then we're going to go to the other side and we're going to push down around the carbon rod again, and now we'll start working our way up, pushing down to the next piece of carbon rod. We want to try and get this to wrap around the carbon rod as best as possible. This material is kind of heavy. It's not going to be a perfect seal, but again, get it as good as you can. Yeah, you'll notice I have a little triangle piece that extends beyond the lead edge. At this point I'm just going to cut off that excess. Be careful at this point not to cut through the lead edge if you can. Now we're going to take our 2" by 3" piece that we folded in half before, and we use 2 pieces of 1" tape. We're going to take the backing off, and we're going to wrap that around the lead edge to cover the piece that we just laid down. And you'll notice 2 lines here that extend beyond the pattern. Those are used to show you placement of where this needs to go. You just lift up your lead edge a little bit and slide the tape underneath until the center of it lines up with the very lead edge of the wing. Once you have that, just give it a light little push, make sure everything is lined up, then pull it back and fold it over.